Welcome back to Delivering More, folks. I'm your host, Ben Alkire. Thank you so much for consuming the content morning, afternoon, or evening. We appreciate you. As always, if you could, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That's going to help us out more than you could ever know. I have an amazing show for you folks today. It is only me in the building, but I have an amazing guest with me. I have Liz Janeway. And my first question for you, Liz, we got to get this out of the way, actually. Pei Wei or Pei Wei?
Pei Wei.
Pei Wei. So she's the Director of Catering Sales for Pei Wei Asian Diner. Liz, thank you so much for joining me. Where are you joining me from today?
I live in Cape Coral, Florida.
Oh, wow. Where is that? Jim, where's Cape Coral at? What's that close? Is that like Tampa, Orlando? What's that closest to?
Way south, so I am on the Gulf of Mexico. We're
wow.
Southwest Florida, right by Fort Myers Beach. I'm about 14 miles from Fort Myers Beach.
Oh, okay. All right. That gives me a little relative area. I've been down to, we did a little trip last year for a driver event. We hit Miami, Orlando, and Tampa in a 3-day span. It was a rush, but it was a great time.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful place to live. So I'm obviously based here, but I travel all over for our company. But this is my happy place. I can put my feet in the sand and go to the ocean and enjoy my day. I can work from there if I want.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that sounds like the life you have carved out down there. What about where were you born and where'd you grow up? Have you always been in Florida?
Absolutely not. I've kind of been a gypsy. I was born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania, so way north. I up on Lake Erie, and I lived there till I was about 25, and then I moved kind of all over the country. I was with another concept, so I moved a lot with that concept. And I was in Ohio, Michigan, then in Florida, then Colorado, then back to Michigan, and now back to Florida.
Okay, well, Erie, PA is a little closer. I'm much more familiar with Erie, PA than Cape Coral, Florida. So a little more relative to me. I appreciate that. What I have, as far as I can see, your background is in work. You began with Ruby Tuesday on LinkedIn in about '93. Was that your first delve into the restaurant industry, or did you grow up as a dishwasher, cook, server, or anything like that?
Nope, that was I never waited tables, done anything in the restaurant business, and I was restarting my life. And Ruby Tuesday was opening in the mall, which normally they're in a mall. And I walked in, applied, there's a grand opening, got hired on the spot, and started out as a server, and kind of worked my way up to being a GM for the company. I spent a lot of years growing with that brand, and that's where I traveled the most with. All those places that I listed, I was with Ruby Tuesday. So I was a GM, and then I was a catering sales manager for them as well.
That's amazing. I know I mentioned it in our notes, and unfortunately, Aaron couldn't join us today. Had some car issues, specifically a blown tire yesterday that he had to get fixed. So that is what it is. But that being said, I did want to mention Ruby Tuesday. We have a little connecting point here. DeliverThat actually got basically transitioned to catering delivery because of an interaction at Ruby Tuesday with John and Aaron, our co-founders. So at the time, it started out as OU delivery at Ohio University, where it was more of a DoorDash Grubhub concept, or DoorDash like Uber Eats concept per meal delivery or whatever. Realistically, they were taking homework, books, whatever to the library. Didn't matter where you were. And then it goes to campus delivery, and they're kind of selling the concept to different colleges around Ohio. And then when they moved back to Canton, they went into a Ruby Tuesday trying to sell that OU delivery service. And the guy basically told him, hey, I don't want to hear anything about what you're trying to sell me, but I have these catering deliveries stacked up on my counter here. If you take one of these deliveries for me, you can come back and we'll talk about the service. And so basically what happens is they take a catering delivery for Ruby Tuesday. They get like a $30 tip from the customer, and like a light bulb went off, and they're like, oh man, maybe we should pivot to catering. So Ruby Tuesday is really the coinage for how DeliverThat kind of came to what we are today. So a good connecting point between the two of us. I thought we could talk about a little bit.
That's a small world. And I actually worked at that Ruby Tuesday in Canton, traveled from Erie, to go help out. Yeah, I did a lot of traveling with Ruby Tuesday back in the day. So I know that area very well. I mean, I grew up in Erie, so, Ohio is right next door. It's closer to Cleveland, where I lived, than it was anywhere in the state of Pennsylvania. So I was very familiar with hanging out in that area.
Amazing, amazing. And did you mention that you had met your husband through Ruby Tuesday?
I did. We were both corporate trainers, and we met in Kokomo, Indiana. So we both heard the word, there's an opening in Kokomo. So we're like, we don't know each other. And so we're like, Kokomo, we're thinking like this tropical island, but it was Kokomo, Indiana. And so it was really in the middle of nowhere. So we were there for about a month, and we've been together ever since. It's 28 plus years.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I appreciate you sharing that little bit of background with me. As far as your time at Ruby Tuesdays and catering and everything like that, compared to nowadays where food delivery is kind of becoming an essential item for consumers, how primitive would you say what you were doing back then was? Like how you guys were taking orders, how you were packaging, how the flow of all of that actually went comparative to now? How would you explain what was going on back then?
So I was the catering sales manager for Ruby Tuesday Colorado franchise. So we had about 18 locations in Colorado, and it was me, and there was no advertising. A little tiny paper menu is what I had on me, and it was, what we like to call bake and take. So, we'd cook the orders and then we'd deliver them ourselves. We'd get a team member, managers, directors. The owner of the company actually delivered for me and Dylan one time for Ruby Tuesday. So, it was, orders were coming through me on my BlackBerry, by the way, which, everybody laughs at that. But like, yes, my pink BlackBerry was my life. And everything went through kind of email to the store. And, we ended up doing a little over $1 million the first year I took over in catering. So if you think about that, we were delivering that ourselves. We had no third party delivery. It was just us cooking the orders and delivering the orders.
That's unbelievable. Do you at times wish you could go back to a place like that, or do you think things are better developed nowadays?
No, I never want to go back to doing that. That now, from where we are now, from when I worked for another brand after Ruby's, but what we do here at Pei Wei is unbelievable, where we've come in the last 3 years since they brought me on. But I would never go back to that, cooking the orders to sell and scrambling. It was just unorganized, even though we were very organized on the outside. On the inside, it was very unorganized. But I mean, I look at, things now, and, there was no texting and things like that. So there was a lot more technology now that just makes my life a lot easier.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. That's
I'm dating myself, by the way, when I'm saying technology.
Hey,
And
wait, I was around we were around for the BlackBerry. I was old enough. That was probably right when I was getting my first cell phone, I imagine. So I'm familiar. You're not dating yourself too much there. We can kind of move forward as you brought up Pei Wei a little bit. You spent a couple years, 2014 to 2016, with the brand, and then you move on to the Einstein Noah Restaurant Group from 16 to 2020. What was your first initial stint with Pei Wei, and then can we move on to Einstein Noah Restaurant Group? Who did they control as far as the brands, and where was that?
So Pei Wei, when I went on with Pei Wei, I was hired as an outside contractor to kind of test catering. So Casey, who was the original owner of Pei Wei, had kind of vetted me with a VP, because my husband also works for Pei Wei. He is a director of operations. So they wanted to make sure that I wasn't directly reporting to him. So again, it was just a test model, and we only had 8 restaurants in Michigan at that time. And we did a ton of catering, just me knocking on doors, getting business, having my book of business, and a lot of just building, that trust with the guests. And again, we were delivering all of these orders on our own. And once our company got sold and it went to other leadership, they looked at it and they were like, we can't have nepotism, and they let me go.
Oh,
and
man.
yeah, so I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we did a lot for the company. I did. And when they let me go, catering, obviously, not to toot my own horn, they absolutely stopped catering everywhere. And because they didn't really have anybody that was talking to the guests and ensuring delivery and following up and thanking people for their orders. So then I moved on to Einstein. I got hired with them. I loved that job. And then COVID hit. So I was running multiple brands with Einstein, because they were it was Bruegger's and Noah. So I had Bruegger's and Einstein. Ironically, I'm not sure how you sell bagels. Two different, like they're
Yeah,
two different bagels, but
competing bagels.
it got
Yeah,
very confusing as to who my loyalty was to, whether it was Einstein or
right.
Bruegger's.
Yeah, that's really funny. I didn't necessarily think about that. I did want to ask this question because this is something I always try to get into. Catering is obviously very lunch focused. It's like a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. kind of window, usually depending on where you are in the country. But Einstein and Bruegger's is obviously very like breakfast focused. So were you doing catering then? And is there a major difference for a restaurant brand when it is a lunchtime or dinner versus breakfast availability?
Oh, absolutely. There's a major difference. Bagel days start at 2 a.m. You're in
Oh
there
man.
cooking, and people are getting, they want breakfast at 7 a.m. to the office. So, our bakers were in at 2 a.m. Sometimes I was at the restaurant at 4 a.m., helping with orders and, doing those things. But we had delivery people. So it wasn't just us delivering. We had easy dispatch is what we used at the time. So, we had monkey media. So orders were being picked up and delivered by third-party vendors. But some of the bigger orders, that came directly from me, we delivered those ourselves because we wanted to have that personal touch. But yeah, the major part was breakfast was very big. We broke into lunch a little bit, kind of, when we were doing box lunches and things like that. But a lot of times, breakfast was 6 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Oh yeah. Yeah, up and at 'em very early. I'm not necessarily a morning person, so I don't know how it would have worked out there.
I'm not either. So
Unbelievable. And then so you mentioned you ended your time there kind of as COVID, I guess would say was beginning. I think July 2020 is about when you left there. Were you was that because of COVID, or were you guys experiencing that early on? What were your first experiences once COVID hit with a restaurant brand?
So I was in Michigan at the time, and we were getting ready to move to Florida, and Michigan was very closed down. So we had, our restaurants were all closed for, Einstein. So what we were doing is we had one restaurant open, kind of in the Detroit market, maybe another one here and there, but it was, we were going out and getting people to order for first responders. So that was kind of our focus is, people would call in and say, I want to buy for the hospital, and we'd have somebody on site. And it got very crazy and hairy, but a lot of the team was let go because of the restaurants that started closing. So it was April of 2020, and I was moving to Florida, and I was going to run Einstein here in Tampa and Orlando, catering, and that was the plan. And then COVID hit, and obviously everything kind of shut down, and they started, closing restaurants and closing honestly bad leases and bad deals. So they closed a lot of the concepts in restaurants, like a lot of companies did during COVID. And I got furloughed, and that was the first time in my life I was like, wait, what does that mean? What does furloughed mean? So I had to look it up. I was like, okay, furloughed. So I was still kind of working, but I wasn't. And it was kind of a hard transition, but it was a blessing in disguise because I'd moved across the country with 3 kids, a puppy, and into a new house and community. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise. And, kept in touch with my boss at the time, actually now works for DeliverThat. She was
Catherine.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that. I didn't know if you guys had crossed paths while you were there or not. I'm happy you brought that up.
Catherine and I are friends. I just spoke to her recently, but she, we keep in touch. She's like, yes, we're gonna continue, Liz. We're not gonna let you go. We want to bring you back on. And then, I think as the company, they just decided to have a very small sales team, and they had like 5 people that were taking phone calls and just putting in orders. Nobody was going out and getting business. So I ended up getting let go. But ironically, I had already been hired by Pei Wei to be their catering director. In the meantime, because I felt something was coming. So I had interviewed with Lauren Goldberg, the owner of Pei Wei, and I was already hired. So I kind of had a backup plan already, and it actually worked out great.
I feel like that's usually kind of what your parents tell you growing up too, is like, make sure you have your next route before you leave the first one or something along those lines. So I think maybe you did it right. But shout out Catherine. I love Catherine. Obviously she's been on the team since end of last year, Jim, beginning of this year, maybe. So she's been on the team now for a solid 6, 7, 8 months. So yeah, we love her. She's great. I appreciate her coming over to the team. So that's a amazing connecting point again for us. But obviously we're now back to your time with Pei Wei now, the second go around. You get brought back on. Was it obviously you mentioned you were furloughed initially, so was it an exciting time to find a new opportunity? Did you get brought on directly for catering only? What was that process like?
So the owner of the company had wanted to interview me for some time, due to the fact that my husband, they were talking about catering at Pei Wei, and they wanted to go a different route. And he's like, well, I know somebody, but she already has a job that she loves. And he's like, well, who is this person? I want to interview her. And he's like, well, it's my wife. And Lauren's like, well, I own the company. I can do whatever I want. I don't care if she's your wife. So, which was kind of funny because during the interview, he did say that. So they interviewed me and I was hired right after I got furloughed. And so I was just kind of pending, waiting for things to open back up because the Pei Weis down here were closed as well, and once we kind of reopened in like May or June, we were reopened, but there wasn't anybody doing catering. The offices were closed down. So there was no need for catering. So I didn't kind of rush into the job. I was just they sent me a laptop. I was just kind of piddling around just to see what was out there and, what I could come up with. And I started back in November of 2020, part-time, like 2 days a week. But, obviously myself, I was working 5 days a week on a laptop that they had given me and an email. So I'm just sending cold emails out to as many people as I could find on Google and companies. And it started out very slow and it was just me. I had nobody else on the team. The team, there was no structure to catering. We had no catering guidelines. It was a little bit of a hot mess when I took over in 2020. And now there's a ton of structure. I have 3 catering coordinators that work for me around the country. I'm about to hire a 4th one. So I always joke around, with people saying, yeah, I used to be a party of 1. Now I'm a party of 4. I'm hoping to be a party of 5 soon,
Yeah, hell yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, hopefully you keep growing that team. What when you first got brought on, so you mentioned the infrastructure kind of initially, it's just you don't really have a team to help you out. What were the first things that you felt like you guys had to optimize to get this catering business back off the ground, especially in a time when it's basically demanded by consumers? The only way you can actually get out to the people at that point in time is basically food delivery. So what were you guys doing to make sure you guys could reach as many guests as possible?
The first thing we did was we switched software. They were using Olo for catering, and I had used Monkey Media in the past. And we actually had a meeting set up with somebody from Easy Cater that I had known from Einstein. And so we were already talking about switching to that platform and using that to put our orders in, our direct entry orders. So I would have a place to track, my growth and our growth as a company and track our customer database. So that's kind of what we did. And that made a major difference when everything was kind of centralized and we started to have more organization with orders and being able to go back and look at orders and track the orders that were coming in and just track everything. Like it just made a big difference changing from one platform to another.
Yeah, that's I can imagine. What so obviously we're partnered with Easy Cater. We love the brand and MSI, the software they have housed under their umbrella now. How do you enjoy the relationship with Easy Dispatch and Easy Cater and things like that? How's that always been for you guys?
It's been great because like I said, the person that I don't know if you want me to say her name or not, but I have a relationship. It's Carrie Montgomery.
Okay, yeah, I know. Yeah,
I have a relationship with her, and I was just with her in Tampa last week. And just the things that we do, and I think that again, I'm a very vocal person. If I see something that's going wrong with the software or something I think that they could do better, I'm immediately sending an email to her and to Andrew saying, hey Andrew, I see this is always glitching, or I see there's a problem with this, or we could make this better if this was available. So it's so funny because other people with other brands, they'll be like, I was talking to Andrew and I asked if he knew you, and he chuckled and said, of course, everybody knows Liz Janeway. I just, I've been doing this a long time, and I always think, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can only get better if you're getting feedback, right? And then adapting to it from there. So that's how I always feel. I would rather like I think a football coach told me one time something along the lines basically when the coach stops coaching you, like that's when you should be worried, right? When they basically stop caring and don't talk to you anymore, that's when you need to feel a little bit worrisome. So that's how I always feel. I like when people kind of give me feedback and things like that. It's much more better for the process.
That's the truth. Is I have two boys, one that played Division I football, and my son, also is playing high school football. Those are all the things that we always taught them. Is when they stop coaching you and you stop getting feedback, that's when you're not part of the team, or you may be losing customers. Is what I think about that. Is when they don't communicate back and they don't want to give me feedback. We may have done something that lost that customer.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to correlate it. We had mentioned briefly kind of in our first interaction here through email. You mentioned that catering has really taken off kind of this past year, I think is kind of what you're referring to. Do you think that's all been attributed to just the demand of food delivery and kind of the consumer adaptation of that? Or do you think there's anything else you could attribute that to specifically for the brand of Pei Wei? Do you think you guys have just developed a good system and been doing much better at that? Or what would you say?
Well, I would say, the consumer demand, like, being from a generation that we didn't really have food delivery and all these things like DoorDash and Uber Eats and all the companies that deliver. For me, having that ability to have something delivered is so much faster, and being able to go online and click something or doing it from an app on your phone. And our brand, the brand awareness that I think that Pei Wei is out there doing, like we partner with Chef Jet Tila, and the
Yeah.
items that he brings to our concept and the awareness that he brings to our concept has made Pei Wei grown tremendously. Like we are opening restaurants left and right. We have 2 opening right now in Houston. We've opened about 4 more in Dallas. We've got 2 in Florida on the books. So we are growing. And a lot of that is to, again, we're going out there and we're nailing it. We're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And when we do a catering order, there's guidelines. And so it's not just Joe Schmo's delivering Chinese food in a box.
Right.
We're delivering Asian food, and it's very organized, and everybody's getting the same experience, whether you order in Southwest Florida or if you order in Arizona. You're getting the same experience, the same, the delivery, the setup, and the food, the flavors. I think Pei Wei has just grown so much in the last year. We honestly can't keep up.
It's a good problem to have, and I'm happy you kind of got to the execution point of why you think you guys have been so successful as of late. Specifically, what do you think a brand can do to make sure that a catering delivery, specifically delivery, goes as well as possible? Is it things like making sure the food's out on time, the packaging, making sure the order contents are all there? What do you guys focus on specifically to make sure that customers' experience with your brand, it goes as well as physically possible?
Well, it starts, with our fire time. We want to make sure that that's hot, fresh food. So when I look at a catering order for 40 or 50, that's potentially feeding 40 or 50 guests in our restaurant. So we want that food to be hot and fresh, packaged right, labeled correctly. And when our delivery partner, pulls up to the door, everything is ready for them to go, and it's organized where we're not running around. We're saying these 7 bags are for you. We
Right.
walk it out to the car. And when we have a delivery partner, such as your company, which is one of my favorites, by the way, I'm not just saying that because I'm on here. DeliverThat is my favorite concept, but now that Catherine's there, it's actually really my favorite. It's we thank that driver and we ask them to please, if you see Pei Wei, please choose us again and come back. And, we want them, what do you need, a water? Do you need a drink? What can we do to make you keep coming back to Pei Wei? And I love when I get a compliment, and I look through my reviews, a couple times a week, and I see that the delivery partner is set up. And the first thing I go do, and I look up to see who our delivery partner was for that order. And I'll send an email saying, please tell them, great job. And thank you for setting that food up for that guest, because that's what they expect. And so when we're partnered with a company that, again, is doing everything that they say they're going to do on top of what we're doing, I think it's a home run every single time.
Of course. Yeah, I do actually really appreciate you saying something along those lines of you sending the feedback back to the delivery service, because in this realm of business, I don't know if this gets talked about a whole lot. On the consumer end, maybe for you guys as well, a lot of what you always hear are kind of the bad experiences, right? You hear about, hey, this food was late. Hey, this driver was rude. Hey, we're missing this part of our order. a lot of time what doesn't get talked about is if the experience was 10 out of 10, right? Because in the end consumer's mind, well, that's how it was supposed to go, right? It should have been on time. I should have got all my food. The driver should have said, here's, thank you, come again, whatever. And then you just don't hear about that because that's what the expectations are already set at. So relaying that feedback, I think, is much more appreciated than you would imagine, especially for a delivery service like ours. We love letting our drivers know when you had a great experience with them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, to me, we're only human, and people, again, I don't think any driver is setting out to make a mistake or be late or any of those things. Like, that's how I always look at it, especially, during the times when it was hard and everybody was understaffed and we didn't have enough people. My message to my managers and to the team was always show grace to people. Like, these are people that are out hardworking and they're delivering our food. We need to thank them for being on time and thank them for picking up our food. That's just how I was raised, and how, in the service industry, I think, always saying what you did a good job on goes way further than what you did a bad job on.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I agree with that 100%. You kind of mentioned going back through your reviews and seeing if a driver set up the food and things like that. I kind of obviously DeliverThat. We like to say that we're a full setup, full service catering delivery service, right? So we pick up, drop off, and do the full setup. For a brand like Pei Wei, how important is that setup for you guys? Are you guys just like a drop and go typically? Are you just pans that kind of get set on a counter and get left out? Do you guys use racks and sternos? How important is the setup aspect for your brand typically?
So it just depends on the order. So our normal is just drop and go catering. Everything is labeled, and we try to have everything hot and fresh. And then when the driver sets up, obviously, we have our branding and our things there. So when they set it up, we want to see our Pei Wei branding in that setup. So but with that said, we do large events. We just did a very large event that we had brought our own racks and things to, and I delivered it with a bunch of other people. It's for 500 people in Tampa.
Wow.
And so it was a production, but we brought racks that were disposable. We also have our own chafing dishes. We all kind of have our thing. So if it's a guest that is wanting something a little bit more upscale or wanting us to stay in staff, we absolutely try to make that happen, but typically we are just more of a drop and go.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. I appreciate that answer. I kind of just wanted to move forward to continue to talk about the drivers and helping them understand what kind of impact, as you mentioned, they have on the end consumer and the delivery in general. So from your standpoint, as the director of catering sales, what do you think a driver can do specifically to impact that delivery? What can set them apart, do you feel like, in the interaction with your restaurant and the end consumer to make sure that delivery goes as well as possible? Similarly to how we discussed how you guys can make the delivery go well as also.
So I think, as somebody that puts orders in, there's a specific spot that says delivery instructions. And that is key for me and again, I will dot my I's and cross my T's. So if I put notes in on an order, I see a guest has put notes in, I immediately follow up with that company to say, hey, did the driver see the notes on this? Because they're very specific. And those are things that I think, if the drivers are following those directions, especially when you're going to a bigger hospital or something, a gated community or things like that, that is something that I think that we all could do better on. But following those directions is what's most important. And again, if you're going to be late, like, we all know that we're going to be late before we're late. Like, that's my thing. Before you're late, call the guest, let them know so that they're not looking for that order. They're not waiting outside, especially our pharmaceutical reps. We know that that time is important to them, and even if we're running 10 minutes behind, as long as they know that the food is on its way, I think that's what's important. So I think communicating, if you're going to be late picking up the food or if you're going to be late delivering, I think communication to the guest and to the restaurant is really important.
For sure. Yeah, I think, what we always try to say is just the transparency aspect. Like you said, if you're going to be late, as long as you let them know, it's usually not a big deal. It's just when you show up and it's 15 minutes late and they're wondering where you were, it's like, then it kind of escalates a little bit. So special delivery instructions, though, that is, I can't agree with you more. I think what's frustrating sometimes as the delivery service is when those instructions aren't provided and then something goes wrong with the delivery. And then you're like, well, how are we supposed to know to go to suite 215 if it wasn't in the instructions? How are we supposed to know to call Jane if the phone number wasn't provided. So those things are always super, super important to provide on delivery service. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think I only have a couple more questions for you, to be 100% honest, Liz. So we might get out of here pretty quick. I just wanted to, on the catering delivery aspect in general, you mentioned in your first instance with Pei Wei, after you had been furloughed and things like that, the department kind of dissipated a little bit, and then as you come back, you've brought it to fruition, kind of maybe where you had initially thought you could get to. How invested are you guys in catering moving forward, whether it's the next 3, 4, 5 years? Is this kind of a hedgehog thing for you guys? Are you guys fully diving in, or is this just another aspect of revenue for you guys to build upon?
I think Lauren, he is very focused on catering. Linda, the COO, she's my direct report. She is very focused on catering. Like, they want our brand out there. So, again, if I bring an idea to the table of, hey, I think we should partner with this company, or I think we should try this, they're always open to, like, it can't hurt to try something. If it's going to bring in sales, why not give it a whirl and give it a try? So, there's some little things that we're doing out in the community, with catering, but they're invested. Like I said, we're opening new restaurants. I'm looking to hire another person to, handle an area that is just could be doing, $1 million plus in catering. And I can't be there often enough. So, if there was 2 of me, maybe, but there's only 1 of me. So.
Of course. Yeah. I think, we said it already, but I think growth is always a good problem to have. Excuse me. And then I got kind of one last question. It's maybe a little bit random. I kind of always like seeing where brands are at as we move forward with technology and everything. How do you guys feel about automation and AI and self-driving delivery? Are you guys experimenting? I mean, I imagine you have to be, but where are you guys in that realm? How do you feel about it specifically? And we can kind of go from there.
That is a very interesting question. So again, being a little bit older person, some of those things scare me just a little bit. But there is I can't remember what it's called, but it's out in Houston. It's not a ghost kitchen, but it's a ghost kitchen per se, where there's actual robots that come to a locker, pick up the food and deliver it to the people. So it's a very big food court kind of area, and
Right.
people order on this app. And then they sit down and a robot delivers it to it. So I haven't seen it. My next trip out to Houston, I'm going to go see it. My husband was out there 2 weeks ago, and he went and saw it, and he called me immediately. He's like, you have to see this, Liz. He's like, it's incredible to see, and of course, all of our children are very into that AI, and, they're very into all of that. But I think, for me, I'm a visual person, and I want to see it, touch it, and do it. But of course, I would be open to all of that. Anything that's going to, get the food out there and maybe, make it less stressful for our teams, I think it would be great.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we'll see where it goes though. I don't think that's a older person thing, like you said. I think everyone's a little nervous to see where it goes at some point in time. So we'll definitely see what happens. Liz, I appreciate your time so much today. If you don't mind, I wanted to close it out with a little segment I call This or That. I'm just going to provide you 2 options. You just got to pick one or the other, and we'll maybe have a little back and forth depending on which one you pick. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. It's good. They're not going to be crazy. This is going to be very easy, I promise. So we'll start out, Liz from Pei Wei, this or that, early mornings or late nights?
Late nights.
Late nights. Do you have a drink of choice? Are you a wine?
I am a wine drinker, yes.
Nice. All right. Easy enough. What about dogs or cats?
Dogs, for sure. I have a golden doodle.
Oh yeah, nice. Is golden doodles is it hypoallergenic? Is that what they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my dog is the opposite of that spectrum. She's a Malamute, so there's hair everywhere in my household. We'll keep it moving. How about books or movies?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say books.
What about we changed this one up a little bit because people got confused sometimes. So I'm be a little more clear. How about summer or winter?
Well, I live where it's summer all the time. So I moved to Florida because I do not like winter. So I am a summer beach girl all day, every day. When it gets below 70, I'm wearing jeans and a sweater here.
Yeah, I feel that. I think you did what all of us from Ohio dream of doing and always tell ourselves we're going to do. And then I've just now been here for 30 years and have never been outside Ohio. So You know, it's I don't like the winter either, but I'm still here, so that says what it does. Last one I got. I like this one, especially with restaurant brand folks, to see what they say. How do you feel about cooking at home or going out to eat?
I definitely go out to eat a lot more now that most of my kids are gone from home. It's just a lot easier to go out than it is to cook. But I spent, 23 years cooking every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I really enjoy going out to eat, having a nice appetizer, a nice drink on the water, and lovely dinner. So that's what I'll be doing tonight.
Yeah, go either way. What if you think you had to ask your boys what their favorite dish of yours was growing up, what do you think they would say?
Toast, homemade spaghetti and meatballs.
Okay.
Pasta from scratch, meatballs from scratch. Spaghetti and
All right.
meatballs.
You make a little garlic bread with that spaghetti and meatballs? I'm a big garlic bread guy.
Of course, my husband is Italian, so his mom gave me her recipe to make everything. So yeah, I have the boys just want to eat bread all the time, and I will say I do have a daughter in the middle.
Okay.
She's 22 and just also graduated from college, and I've taught her how to make sauce and meatballs. So
Yeah, got to pass it down. That's the key. Got to pass it down always. All right, Liz. Well, that's all I got for you today. I really genuinely appreciate you so much for joining me today. I think it's a great conversation. Hopefully we can get a little more exposure to the Pei Wei brand, to our driver fleet, some other restaurant brands around the world, and we can go from there. But thank you, Liz, Pei Wei Asian Diner. Thank you so much.
thanks, Ben.